Welcome back to Trending in Education and Happy New Year. We're here in 2018 to talk about the trends that are influencing the education and ed tech space. Once again, Dan Strafford, Brandon Jones, Michael Palmer back with you, and happy to be here. We want to talk about some predictions for 2018 from some different news media outlets, and also tease out some work we're going to be doing on our own predictions for 2018 as January rolls on. Mike, Brandon, good to be back with you. Michael, I know you were on vacation. I am jealous. It was in much warmer of climates than I am in now. How was your vacation? How was your New Year?
It was great. A happy New Year, Daniel. A happy New Year, Brandon.
Hey, thanks.
And you know, in no particular order. Excuse me. I just like to wish a happy New Year to both of my colleagues here, and also happy New Year to our listeners. Right?
I think in a particular order, we put happy New Year to our listeners first.
Yes.
You always come first to us.
Yeah. Happy listeners, happy life.
That's what they say.
That's what I like to say.
Yeah.
So my New Year's was great. I was in San Diego, California, the southern. I believe it's the southernmost city on the Pacific in California. In the U.S. Because if you go further south, you're in Tijuana.
Yeah.
Right. And we didn't go to Tijuana, but we kind of wanted
Tijuana?
to.
Yeah,
exactly. But lots of time on the cliffs above the shore, and discovered e-bikes. So you guys know we like to travel and ride our bikes entirely of our own power, but like it's pretty hilly out there. So the guy got us to rent some e-bikes, and it's amazing. It's like, you know, the way you love the Neuralink concept, Brandon?
Yes.
It's like Neuralink, except I'm on a bike, and it's like steroids basically, but in a nice, healthy, I'm not in a race.
I don't know an e-bike. An e-bike that's a bike that has some electric power to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's got a throttle.
Yeah.
But then it's also got the ped assist. And the ped assist is like a range of 1 to 5, but it sort of enhances your pedaling. So it gives you a little more juice. So like you feel like $1 million on those things.
I bet.
Yeah. So that plus a lot of sunsets, and it's nice. New Year's on the beach. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And nice.
And it was also like 12 degrees here when it was like 70 something out there. So I'm feeling good. Landed last night, but I still have hashtag vacation afterglow.
Yeah. But you're here with us.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
Brandon, how about yourself? How'd you spend New Year's? Did Penny ring in? Did you make it to midnight? Or
She did not make it to midnight. I think she did last year, actually, which was probably bad parenting. But she and her little friend, who was over with her friend's parents, made it till about 10 p.m., which is still pretty late for a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Yeah, it's like New Year's in the middle of the Atlantic somewhere, right?
Somewhere, yes. Yeah. I think not Atlantic time, whatever the next time zone over is from Atlantic time.
Like Greenland time, maybe?
Yeah, Greenland time.
Who knows?
I was sick, man. So as the listeners have heard, from, I guess it was our HQ trivia episode, all the way to right now. It's like it's come around and then come around again.
Yeah.
It's like in Go Dog Go.
Yeah.
They're on that Ferris wheel.
But
go around again.
You're powering through it though, bro.
Yeah. So it's been not great. Being sick over the holidays when it's cold, especially when you've got a sick kid. Like it's pretty much the worst. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of you. But here I am. I'm excited. It's 2018. I like that we've been doing this podcast for 3 years. That's
true.
That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like about New Year's is thinking about. I think we've talked about this maybe even on this pod. I've only got like a couple plays, and I just keep running them. When is the latest in the year that you could wish someone happy?
We were talking about that a year ago.
Yes, yeah. I think we were. Was it?
Yeah.
So let's do it again.
Right.
When is it? It's today, I think.
Well, also because of the way the year fell, right? So like when New Year's is on a Monday,
yes,
which it was this year.
It was yesterday.
Like, that makes Tuesday the day those of us who have heroic work ethics
yes.
make it into work.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
And then if we hadn't, whoever you were with around either the New Year's Eve or New Year's,
Correct.
you wish them a happy.
Or you didn't.
Yeah, and if you needed to send a text message or hit people on Facebook, if you felt the need, you had all day yesterday. You really had all weekend to plan who you were going to be like, hey, just thinking of you.
Yeah.
Have a great year.
Yeah.
And then there was yesterday, and now today is all your work Happy New Year's.
Sure.
But by tomorrow, I guess if you hadn't seen anybody, if you hadn't seen somebody in a while.
Here's my question on that topic, which I don't know that we hit last year. What about purchasing something? You're in a store. You're buying a newspaper, or you picked up, like if you're at a restaurant, you're a waiter. Like what, Brandon? What do you think then? Like how do you, what timestamp do you put on that?
I think it's the first time you see anyone in the New Year. So if you're a waiter and someone comes in on December 30th,
we're gonna hold you to this.
If they come in December 31st, then when you say Happy New Year, they think it applies to tonight, Happy New Year's Eve.
Right.
But if you come in on like December 20th, maybe, Happy New Year. Mm-hmm. To be clear, I'm still talking about 2017.
Right.
Like that's what I think you have to, after maybe like October, when I would still fully endorse Happy New Year. You need to append this to your statement, is to refer to the year that you're wishing someone a Happy New Year when you're in October or later, I think.
Yeah, maybe say like, I want you to have a wonderful 2018.
But I mean,
like personalization. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, but
and then call your year, because I could also say
call
like,
your year.
Brandon, I really want you to have a wonderful 2022.
Right. Yeah. Happy New Year.
Like it's
not
coming.
This next one,
but
have a good one
eventually.
Yeah.
I'm forecasting.
Well, I know we're supposed to be talking about trends, but maybe this is my own trend. This is my personal
People
trend.
are saying Happy New Year a lot. It is trending.
Check this. This. Ready?
Yeah.
Deleted Facebook from my iPhone.
Good call.
Yeah. So I didn't.
Intentionally.
Yes. Yes. I didn't. I didn't delete my Facebook account because I'm not a barbarian. But like
Sure.
my goal for 2018 for me is less Facebook, more faces, more books.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just I realized that the calculus for me, and like nothing against you, Zuck. You're welcome to come sit here with.
You're referring to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, we casually refer to him as a Zuck.
Yeah. But the calculus was not good for me personally, because it felt like a lot of empty calories. Like I was investing a good amount of my time just sort of idly, and not getting a tremendous return from it. So
also, I mean, as trendsters.
Yeah.
I don't know what word. I don't know if we.
Trendsters.
As trendsters.
Yeah, rhymes with friendsters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But as trendsters, like Twitter is more where you got to be, because like if you actually want to see what's new and emerging, it's more designed with that intent, as opposed to Facebook. You get a sense of your own circle, and like if stuff is showing up there, you understand at a sort of microclimate level. Okay, there are some trends within my little world. But if you're in a platform, if you're spending your Facebook time on Twitter, which I don't think you're even saying you would do that, you're talking about reading a book.
Yeah, so I was reading books. So I was sitting with my daughter, because I realized like a lot of times when I'm there with my daughter that, I'm not super interested in the friggin' Octonauts or like whatever it is that we have to be watching for whatever time. So like I end up looking at my phone, and I think that's I'm
sorry, Brandon. The Octonauts, that's mixed martial arts.
It
you
is.
You read books about mixed martial arts.
Yeah, because I'm in
that's a new trend. Maybe you'll talk about it later.
I'm in Hayat Ed.
Wow.
But yeah, that's I'm just gonna read a book, just a physical book with physical pages. Read a book.
Yeah,
that's what I'm gonna do.
Maybe we could talk more about what we're reading. Because I actually started reading a book last night on the plane, and it was actually because the book I brought with me on vacation was a book I'd read before called The Shallows.
Okay.
And how the internet is basically rotting our brains.
Yeah.
Which is sort of where you landed.
Yeah, I'm out,
in terms of getting out of those.
I'm getting into the deep waters.
Yeah, but so interestingly, I couldn't get through that one. I'd read it already. But then I started reading a book called Originals, which is basically how nonconformists are really the change agents and the innovation cells of of Organizations,
Yeah.
generally, by Adam Grant out of Wharton. So he's
Okay.
like an organizational psychology guy. But it's a great
Were
read.
all of his ideas derivatives?
No, but that's an interesting calculus.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he was. It's a really good read. I'm in the middle of it. I definitely, it's the type of thing. I do tend to try to read stuff that I think might relate to stuff here, like Rohit Bhargava, guest of the
Rohit,
show,
baby.
friend of the show. He does his non-obvious trend report. His 2018 trends also was a great read, which I think we're going to be talking to Rohit, talking about
great.
his, because we were saying, like, January is trend month.
It's trend month.
But when you're traveling, frequently that's just about the only time I browse and buy a book to read is when I'm in an airport, and the originals just kind of jumped off the shelf. But like I thought, I mean, not literally, I grabbed it. It grabbed my attention, and then
that'd be some selling right there.
Right. Well, now with 3D printing, 4D printing,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, it's 2018. There should be an extra D.
Boing.
More D. 2018. 5D printing.
5D. Oh, it's like razor blades.
I think it is like razor blades.
I like where you're going with that.
Yeah.
But maybe if we're both trying to read more, and Dan, maybe read more too.
Dan doesn't read. We're going to make the assumption for him. I'm in. I'll read. I like books when I get.
I mean, we read articles, but maybe we could talk about books a little more this year.
I read that one textbook when you sent me.
Dan.
That was me. I do think it's interesting, Brendan, you're making the point about Facebook. A couple of different articles out today as well about comparing Facebook as a social platform to the opioid crisis and other harsh narcotics, basically scanning the dopamine of children while on Facebook and while on social media, something that we've talked about here before. Like what's the sort of level to which you can be addicted to something like, and how does it affect your learning, and how does it affect what you do on a daily basis? I still have it on my phone. I don't log into it much, and it's probably worth now, just from a user standpoint, to remove it because it bogs down my phone memory wise. So it might be something I do here in 2018 as well. But interesting to see that it came out today. A couple of articles that I saw across different platforms about the correlation or the comparison, not correlation, comparison.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a trend too. Like the attention economy, like that concept of the attention economy was a trend I noticed maybe about 6 months ago. I started to see it. Like a couple of ex-Google, ex-Facebook guys. One of them, I think, was the lead like ethicist at Google, or I think Google or Facebook. They all kind of cross-pollinate over there, but he became an advocate for changing your behaviors, which is something that people typically do around New Year's. And ever since then, I turned off I have no notifications on my phone anymore, which is similar to I still have Facebook. Obviously, I need that. It's like a nice, comfortable pillow for me when I want to do low value things. But I did turn off all my notifications, and that did trigger some it ties a little bit to the shallows concept as well, how like these media formats actually impact our neurochemistry. But like, if you're constantly checking your phone for notifications, did I get more likes, did I get a text message, did I get something new as an input, it's harder to get into deeper thought patterns because you're constantly interrupted. And then similarly, if you're not interrupted but you're like, I haven't checked Facebook in the last 25 minutes. Let me check Facebook. It's the same thing. Like you start to lose those moments of reflection, those moments of boredom is another thing that I've heard people talk about more recently, is that boredom actually does trigger creativity. And it does. We talked about the posterior cingulate cortex in the brain. But
I always feel so creative around you, Mike. That's the thing. Now I finally know why.
Yeah.
Bang. Starting off 2018.
But the attention economy is an interesting idea. And then also how like notifications and social media tie to our brain chemistry. Like
absolutely.
It's always that's the neurochemical of choice. Trending. These are trends.
And I know
we have some trends to talk about. Dan, you were saying a thing. Say a thing.
I just Rohit last year talked about the unplugging a bit from the digital natives and getting outside and doing a bit more face-to-face, as Brandon said. So interesting to tie it all together. I think we see things very similarly as we move forward here in 2018. There are a couple articles out that we're going to talk about on today's episode about 2018 education trends specifically. We will keep our eyes out as well for EdTech and other peripheral genres and media modes that may influence what we do here on the podcast. But today, specific to education, actually going back to someone we talked about last year, NPR has out their predictions for 2018, more specific, Claudio Sanchez, and we did discuss his predictions for 2017. Now we will do the same here in 2018. Claudio, if you're listening, feel free to reach out. Love to have you on. But 4 predictions from Claudio this year, and they do seem to be fairly politically emboldened in that I will read off the 4 and then we can dive into whichever you feel are the best. DACA will end, so the Deferred Action for Children Arrivals will end in 2018. U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos will step down in 2018. Higher education will dominate the headlines, which we'll have to dive into a little bit more to describe. And then the final one is, after years of modest progress, closing the achievement gap between rich and poor, black and white, will hit a wall. So, Brandon, I don't know if there's one you want to start off with most of all, one that resonates the most, but where do you see these 4 predictions heading into 2018?
I mean, I feel like I ragged on Claudio last year. I didn't intend to, and so I feel like I'm going to do it again. I'm just keeping up this trend.
It's a hot take.
I like Claudio. I like Mr. Sanchez.
If you're nasty.
Yeah, I'm not though. I feel like these are all nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
But number 3, these are predictions about what's going to happen, and your prediction is there'll be something in the headlines. I feel like that to me is I'm being too unkind. The higher education will dominate headlines. In there, as you said, Dan, there's like whether that's safety on campus, Greek life, sexual harassment.
Yep.
That's been things that have been in the news over the last couple of years. Certainly, and in greater numbers, I think probably will. Probably some Me Too stuff with faculty as well. So I think that's probably likely. It feels as written to be a little broad. Like, what of this? I guess maybe the operative word here is dominate the headlines. Operative words. Mm-hmm. But that feels like it's not a super specific prediction.
It does feel as though it's the layup, the one that can be broad enough to be at the end of the year a checkoff box, where the others are a little hotter, a little firmer takes, whereas this one feels as though let's get to a 250 batting average, 1 out of 4, and then move from there.
I don't know if I agree with that though, because I would say with the current political landscape, with our president in office, like nothing else will dominate the headlines. Like education, making it into the attention economy we were just talking about. Maybe higher education will dominate the ed tech headlines, but like, how does education make mainstream media news? It's basically, he had another prediction about U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos will step down. That's probably the only way it dominates more broad news cycles, is like you need Betsy DeVos to be doing something outrageous, sensational.
The other way is free speech stuff on campuses, like where there are whether it's alt-right groups and their rights to have free speech. I think that's another place.
It could be like a flashpoint, but it's more like flashpoint, like as opposed to like educational policy and like the implications of the tax plan on higher ed funding. That's going to make education news, but it's not going to dominate the more broad news cycle unless something fundamental changes. With the 2018 elections coming, how much education is even part of that conversation is another interesting topic where I didn't really see Claudio get into that. That might be something, again, to pick up on Dan's tease, that might be something that we're tracking, that we might talk a little bit more about, just the impact of an election year in the current political landscape. What's that going to mean to trends in education and what's from a policy or a campaigning perspective, like who's going to champion education. Mayor de Blasio, just was inaugurated in New York yesterday, and he's been very, passionate about education. But I just think it's more the news cycle is just so crazy right now, and there's like impending like international crises, and it's just tough to get education onto the national agenda.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I can appreciate that, and good point about more the full national headlines, not just education headlines. And there is another article which we may get a chance to talk about after we focus here on Claudio from Inside Higher Ed, which hits on Brandon's point about activism, free speech, safety, and climate on campus, which could be a key talking point too as we head further on. But Mike, from your perspective, of these four, is there one outside of the third one that you think is interesting, you disagree with, one that you'd like to hammer down on a little bit here from Claudio's takes?
I mean, I did think the DACA is probably, as it relates to education, maybe that's part of the story. But I do think like how we can kind of humanize the dreamers and understand their story and how their story sort of ties to the ethos of America, like how, immigrants and people who came here, they had no influence over their own presence here in this country. And then if you understand the stories of the dreamers, and, we had Nancy Sanchez from the Kaplan Foundation on the show last year talking about how to help traditionally underserved students, like their stories are very inspirational. And I think, if we are going to try to affect any kind of change against this attention economy and the most outrageous stories win, it does feel like maybe something around DACA and something around sort of the education narrative and the sort of growth into the American dream that the DACA students represent. That one did kind of jump out to me, like saying that DACA will end is a pretty powerful concept, because I do think that narrative is already out there about the dreamers. And then if DACA does in fact end, how does it end? And how does that narrative potentially bubble up to something more national? Maybe that's a place where education can kind of emerge, but I don't know how much education is central to the DACA story, at least as far as I understand it. So I thought the fact that Claudio added it as his first thing that he's tracking and then made the prediction that DACA will end as an education reporter, I thought that was a pretty interesting choice.
Yeah, I think this isn't. I think this isn't going to happen. That's my read on this. Or at least there would be a bridge from DACA to something else, right? And whether that's legislated or that's an executive order, I think I don't have insight into that. But there's this population, like the stories are compelling enough that like basically every one of them is a compelling story. It's incredible that, and you got 250,000 or however many of them there are. You're not gonna just in a year before, I guess in a midterm election year, you're not gonna have 250,000 of these people just burying the GOP. I think so. My guess is that something happens for Dreamers. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's less, it's less support, and but I think that you can be tough on immigration, which obviously this administration wants to be through the travel ban, et cetera, whatever. It's travel ban 3.0 these days. You don't have to like, this can actually be a good, sort of diversionary distraction tactic. Probably sounds like I'm making too much of a value judgment, but you may be able to include support for DACA in a, sort of a network of immigration-related policy. Yeah. So my guess, my hope, maybe this is just my own personal preferences coming out here a little bit, but my hope is that and my expectation is that something is going to happen for DACA.
It is interesting to think about it as like, grand compromise fodder, because like it's out there, the clock is ticking.
Yeah.
It's a bargaining chip in negotiations about infrastructure. Maybe you bundle DACA in with infrastructure. I've heard infrastructure being tied to the wall.
The wall. Yep.
And, if, for example, a big infrastructure bill is tied to the wall, like I don't see, not like literally tied to the wall, but
literally that book jumped out of you.
But if DACA were somehow mixed into those bundles, or that's that kind of negotiation, I just don't know, with the climate such that it is, like, how will those grand bargains be struck? Like, I definitely, I'd love to see. I think I would probably lean in the direction that you're going. So like trending in education is actually thinking DACA, or just some way to represent the roughly 800,000 undocumented immigrants to allow them to still have a path to citizenship and an ability to stay in the U.S. I would agree that that's going to happen. I can't see like mass deportation of
it's just a bad look. I mean, it's a bad look. Like, all of these students are so inspirational. It's, I don't know when it ends. Sometime this like coverage would end sometime early this year.
Yep.
You're gonna have like people rounded up on campus. Like, it's just gonna be that's a debacle. Like, I can't imagine. It's like the government shutdown, right? So like I feel like we keep kicking that can. Like, our legs aren't as strong as they used to be. Like, we're kicking that can less far down the road.
Yeah.
It's like, and the next deadline for the government shutdown is later this week, right? Like,
right.
But we keep finding a way to make that not happen, because nobody really wants it. I don't think that anybody. Sure, there are some people, but there aren't a lot of people who are saying, these 250,000 students who are in college who've persevered against the odds against them should be deported. It's not a super popular position, probably.
Yeah,
maybe.
What do you guys think about the hot take on Betsy DeVos? Do you think she will step down? I thought that was. I gotta say, like, to Claudio's credit, we do, and we gotta come up with a word for this, but there's some people who come up with weaker trends that aren't really testable. Like the weak tea.
Tepid
takes. I was going tepid takes.
Tepid takes. Yeah. Lukewarm. Aside from higher education will dominate the headlines, which we talked a little bit about. That's kind of vague, and its vagueness maybe makes it a little less hot. DACA will end. U.S. Education Secretary Betsy DeVos stepping down, and even the fourth one is kind of a hot take, but it's also vague, like saying that we've been making progress against the achievement gap between rich and poor, black and white, and then that's going to hit a wall. Like, have we really been making tremendous progress, and how do we know what hitting a wall is like? So, like, I don't know about his third and fourth topics, but I think he's making very sort of concrete predictions about DACA ending and Betsy DeVos stepping down. We'll be able to measure whether those predictions come true or not. And I thought the Betsy DeVos stepping down is interesting, because I'm not necessarily clear as to why she would do that, because I don't think education is really hitting the national consciousness in a meaningful way. So unless it made sense for her personally, I don't really necessarily understand why she would step down. I know she hasn't, her favorability probably isn't particularly high.
Yeah, I think that would be, and I think that Claudia mentions this, that, she who was, had obviously her own civilian life as a private citizen and as a business person, that she would, sort of go back to doing that, because this gig is not so sweet. I can see that. I feel like if I were betting, I would bet the yes on this one. Mm-hmm. I'm not, I don't have insight here either that folks listening don't. But the trend seems to have been for people in the current administration to have less than the 4-year gig. Like, it's like you stick around for a few months and then you get replaced. Mm-hmm. I don't think this is particularly high on this administration's agenda, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't a place where she was getting a lot of support and felt like she could be doing something better or different with her time.
I guess that's true. And also for a candidate who's trying to make their mark around education in the midterm, she's an easy target. So I could see her getting tired of the stress that she's under, where like you do see like her regularly confronted when she's trying to, visit a school, like suddenly there's a protester, hounding her.
Yeah.
She may just want to get
like
back.
If there were protesters on my way to work every day being like,
yeah,
Brandon Jones, you stink.
Yeah.
That would be such a bummer.
Yeah, it would.
That would empty my bucket.
Yeah.
I would want to do something different with my time probably. And I get that I'm oversimplifying here, but that probably does. I mean, that's gotta be not awesome.
Right. And I guess there's two reactions to that. One is you kind of like dig in your heels and you're like, I'm going to show them. And the other is like, peace. I'm out.
Yeah.
And she may be more, again, this is just our sort of hot take department, but she may not really want to withstand this for a long period of time. She'll probably want to figure out the graceful out. So I thought that was an interesting one to raise. And I think, Dan, you were mentioning these are more political perhaps than we typically have been on the show.
Yep.
I just think it's really hard not to be
Absolutely
influenced by the political dynamics that are out there, and particularly if you have a show that's talking about education. So
and I think look, we obviously we work for a publicly traded company, and so we're not trying to represent maybe even our own personal views, but certainly not speaking on behalf of our organization. But I think that as people who are talking about trends, you're able to talk about whether or not you think things are likely to happen without sort of endorsing or otherwise based on your own political views. I think that's where we typically, that's a lane we try to stay in. I think appropriately so.
Sure.
But I think that shouldn't mean that there's a prohibition. I'm agreeing with you. I think that there shouldn't be a prohibition on talking about things that, are red or blue just because, we're on this show. So we'll see.
Yep.
Well, I think to both your point, I think, Brendan, you also sort of laid out the betting odds of it seem to trend anecdotally towards it being, 60-40 her leaving simply by what we've seen from what she deals with every day. Mike, as you pointed out, and even further, what we've seen from members of the cabinet and this administration, the churn seems to be pretty high thus far. So it does seem like a pretty even, if not, somewhat leaning towards yes bet on her moving on. But I do think, Mike, to your point, and to reiterate it, trends are trends, and something that's trending very much right now is discussion around the political climate and how that's influencing all sectors, business and taxation, and education is a large part of that. We're going to see education policy probably come into focus here in 2018. It would seem that would be a talking point heading into the election that is the midterms this year. So will be something I'm sure we visit off of articles and bring in some experts to talk about it as we move forward. Overall, Claudio's takes, only 4 of them, so not a ton to dive into, but strong, to your point, Mike, 2 that we can sort of grade him on, 2 that may be a little bit more nebulous in whether or not they come true. As is something we have talked about here on the podcast previously, the Every Student Succeeds Act, that is up for debate again, and whether or not it will move forward and be something that is reinstituted or continued. It's something from President Obama. We'll see if this administration continues it. But how do you say the measurement happens for something like this gap between black and white, rich and poor? Do we have those stats that we can run with, or do you think this is more something that is continually happening and a statistic that needs to be developed over many, many years to see what that gap in fact is?
Yeah, to me, the achievement gap is real, and there's a bunch of different ways in which it can be measured. I think part of the complexity is that it can be measured in a lot of different ways, so that understanding which metrics we track to see whether it's trending in the right direction, whether it's hitting a wall, whether new gaps are being exposed that maybe we hadn't thought about before. I think it's difficult at this point in time to make meaningful predictions about trend line around the achievement gap. I know one of the things that I think we're coming around to too is understanding our place in the conversation. And I do think trying to help address the achievement gap is more the position that I would take. So like, to me, why I get frustrated by it is like, it's a vague prediction. And then it's also acting as though, Inside Higher Ed and Kaplan Test Prep and NPR, as though we don't have any impact on these broader issues. So like, I actually would want us to advocate for more attention around the achievement gap and more exploration of potential avenues to sort of narrow it and to start to solve that problem. And that's really why I thought it was a little bit of a tepid take to say it's going to hit a wall. I think the gaps are across many different ways of analyzing achievement, and I don't think it will uniformly hit a wall. That feels a bit narrow, and it probably is short-sighted in that some folks are really trying to solve this problem and try to move the needle in the right direction, and I think that's the side that we want to land on.
We are coming up to time here on the podcast, Brandon and Mike, and our listeners. Thanks so much for listening. But as we close out, we do have Inside Higher Ed had their own predictions. We are too working on our own. So this is not the last you'll hear about what we look forward to in 2018. And of course, we'll look forward to talking to Rohit and other trendsetters here in January and into February as the year goes on to talk about what they see coming in 2018. But Brandon, want to give you a last word here. Any final thoughts on what Mike just said or anything else from this list from Claudio, or broader scope, things you took from this and that you see heading into 2018?
Yeah, I think we'll save the things we see for heading into 2018 teaser here for all of you for our future show. But one other thing from a trend that I've seen from Claudio is fewer and fewer predictions each year. So in 2016, he had 6 predictions for 2016. He had 5 predictions for 2017, and he has 4 for 2018. At that rate, I don't know if this is like Zeno, and he's never going to reach the wall. That turtle will never reach the wall, but that's not a good trend. I joke, like we like he scored himself on his performance, and some are harder to measure. What particular measure you're talking about. What does dominate the headlines mean, or on which measure is the achievement gap hitting a wall? How do you quantify hitting a wall? But look, I like, and this is part of the reason I like being part of the show, is I like thinking about where things are going, and then thinking about how you can use your position to influence those trends if they're not in the direction that you want. So glad. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks for having us be able to have a conversation about what you think where we're going. I don't know, Dan, are you going to post to the glossary? I can't the glossary. I love
Twitter.
Are you going to tweet the glossary full of the Inside Higher Ed article as well, or are we coming back to that at some later time?
I'll tweet it out so it's out with this link as well when we post this one with Claudio's. We'll get them both out. The glossary is alive and well. It is it's living the good life over there
alive
at
and well.
And January's trend month. So like it's time to look at trends for the year. So if our listeners have trends, if they have articles where they saw some hot takes, some tepid takes, whatever they may be,
cold treats,
and then like we said, we're sharpening our prediction meters for the upcoming year. But yeah, it'll be fun.
We'll be back with you soon as we talk more about Trend Month here in January. And of course, as we head into February, we'll talk about all the trends in ed tech, in education, and more. Lots of conferences going on, CES and more, already kicking off the year on technology and education, and so much to look at. So looking forward to a big year here in Trending in Education right here on our podcast. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back with you next week.